The sun hung low over the Montana plains, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose as the day surrendered to dusk. Dust clung to the hem of Clara Hayward's skirts while she stood beneath the gnarled arms of a lone cottonwood, watching the stranger kneel before her. His hands, rough as saddle leather, trembled slightly as he unwound the blood-soaked bandana from his left forearm. The wound was ugly, jagged, deep, still oozing where the Comanche arrow had torn through 2 hours earlier. Clara's breath caught. She had seen death before, smelled it on her father's coat when he came home from the war between the states, but never so close, never this raw. The man's face was shadowed beneath the wide brim of his hat, yet even in the dying light she could make out the hard set of his jaw and the faint scar that cut through his left eyebrow like a lightning strike. "Hold still," she whispered, though her voice shook worse than his hands. He glanced up. Eyes the color of winter sky pinned her in place. "Yes, ma'am." She tore a strip from her petticoat, fine cambric her aunt in St. Louis had sent last Christmas, and pressed it hard against the gash. He hissed but did not pull away. Blood seeped through the cloth almost at once. "You're losing too much," she said. "We need to get you to the house. Your house is 20 miles back, Miss Clara. I ain't making it that far before dark, and neither are you. Not with night riders still about." He was right. The raid on the stagecoach had scattered bodies and luggage across the trail like broken toys. The driver lay dead, the guard half scalped and crawling toward the creek before the Comanche put another arrow in him. Clara had hidden beneath mail sacks, heart hammering so loud she was sure the warriors could hear it. Then this man. This quiet, sun-browned stranger with a Navy Colt on his hip and a Henry rifle across his saddle, had come thundering down the ridge, firing until the last painted pony vanished into the heat shimmer. He had saved her life. Now his own was leaking out between her fingers. She looked around. The cottonwood offered the only shade for miles. The stage horses were gone, run off or stolen. Her valise lay split open, letters and ribbons fluttering like white flags. Somewhere in the distance a coyote began to sing. "Then we stay here," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "Till the bleeding stops." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You always this bossy with men you just met. Only the ones who bleed on my best petticoat." A reluctant grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Fair enough." She helped him sit with his back against the tree trunk. His name, he told her, was Eli Calder. 32 years old, late of nowhere in particular. Born in Tennessee, fought for the Confederacy though he owned no slaves and cared less for the cause than for the $20 a month the quartermaster paid. After Appomattox he drifted west. Colorado mines, Arizona silver camps, Texas cattle trails, until the wanderlust thinned and something quieter took root inside him. He had been riding north to the Judith Basin, looking for open range and a place to hang his hat for good. Clara listened while she worked, rinsing the wound with water from his canteen, threading a needle she found in her sewing kit. The sun slipped lower, shadows stretched like long fingers across the grass. "You flinch and I'll stick you twice," she warned. "Yes, ma'am." She poured whiskey from his flask over the gash. He went rigid, teeth clenched so hard she heard them grind, but no sound escaped. Then she began to stitch. 8 neat, tiny sutures. Her mother had taught her on quilt pieces back in Pennsylvania before fever took both parents and left Clara alone with a ticket west and an aunt who wrote pious letters but never once offered to take her in. Eli watched her face more than the needle. "Where'd a girl like you learn to sew flesh instead of samplers?" "My father was a surgeon with the 72nd Pennsylvania. I carried his instruments at Antietam when I was 12. Held lanterns while he sawed bones." She tied off the last knot, snipped the thread with her embroidery scissors. "I'm not as fragile as I look, Mr. Calder." "Never thought you were, Miss Hayward." Night slid over them quick as spilled ink. Stars pricked out one by one. Somewhere an owl called. Eli built a small fire with dead cottonwood branches while Clara heated the last of the coffee from his saddlebags. They sat close to the flames, shoulders almost touching. "You could have ridden off after the fight," she said quietly. "Left me for the wolves or worse. Why didn't you?" He poked the fire with a stick, sparks swirling upward. "My mother raised me better. And," he hesitated, as though the words tasted strange. "You reminded me of someone." "Who?" He was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My sister Ruth." She had the same red in her hair when the sun hit it. Same stubborn set to her chin. Comanche took her and my mother outside Fort Belknap in 64. I was 15. Too small to stop it. His voice stayed level, but the stick in his hand snapped in two. Been chasing ghosts ever since, I reckon. Clara's throat tightened. She reached out without thinking and laid her hand over his. Calluses met soft skin. Neither pulled away. I'm sorry, she whispered. He turned his palm up, closing his fingers around hers. Don't be. Tonight you gave me something I ain't had in years. What's that? A reason to sit still. The fire settled into glowing coals. Somewhere far off, thunder rumbled though no clouds darkened the sky. Clara shivered in her thin shawl. Without a word Eli shrugged out of his coat, sheepskin lined, still holding the day's warmth, and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled of wood smoke, horse, and something unmistakably him. She should have refused. Ladies did not accept gentlemen's coats on first acquaintance, especially not in the middle of nowhere with no chaperone but the moon. But the coat was warm and she was bone tired, and his eyes asked nothing she wasn't willing to give. They talked until the fire burned low. She told him about Philadelphia boarding schools, about her aunt's marble house in St. Louis where she had been little more than an unpaid companion, about the advertisement she'd answered for a schoolteacher in Virginia City, Montana Territory. He told her about breaking broncs on the Pecos, about a winter spent trapped in a line cabin with only a deck of cards and a bottle of trade whiskey, about waking one morning in Cheyenne and realizing he could not remember his mother's face anymore. When the coals were ash and the night wind carried the scent of sage, he spread his bedroll beneath the cottonwood. One blanket for the ground, one for cover. There's room, he said, voice rough. Ground's cold. I'll keep watch. She hesitated only a heartbeat. Then she lay down beside him, careful not to touch his wounded arm. He pulled the blanket over them both. The space between them was mere inches, filled with the sound of their breathing and the distant howl of coyotes. Clara, he said into the dark. Yes. If we make it to your ranch tomorrow, would you let me call on you proper? Hat in hand, Sunday best, the whole foolish dance. She smiled against the sheepskin collar of his coat. Only if you promise to let me check those stitches first. He laughed softly, the sound warm in her ear. Deal. Above them the stars burned fierce and bright, the same stars that had watched wagon trains and buffalo herds and broken treaties roll across these plains for 100 years. Beneath the cottonwood two wanderers slept back to back, sharing warmth and dreams neither had dared voice until this night. By morning the wound had crusted over and the bleeding stopped. They drank the last of the coffee cold, saddled his big bay gelding, and rode double toward the distant smoke of the Hayward ranch. Clara's arms circled Eli's waist. His good hand covered hers where it rested against his shirt. Behind them the cottonwood stood alone again, roots drinking from a shallow spring no map had ever marked. And if the wind carried the faint scent of petticoats and sheepskin and something new beginning, only the prairie knew. They reached the ranch by noon. Old Tom Hayward took one look at the stranger riding in with his niece's arms around him and reached for the greener shotgun behind the door, then saw the way Clara's eyes shone and lowered the barrels. 3 months later, when the cottonwood put out its first green leaves, Eli Calder stood beneath those same branches in a new black broadcloth suit, hat literally in hand. Clara walked toward him on her uncle's arm wearing her mother's rebuilt wedding gown, red hair blazing like fire against the spring sky. The preacher from Virginia City spoke the words quick, afraid the groom might faint from happiness or the bride might change her mind. When it was done Eli kissed her like a man who had crossed deserts to find water. And somewhere, far out on the plains, a coyote lifted its head and sang to the rising moon, as if it understood that some wounds, when tended gently enough, heal into something stronger than they were before.